Welcome everyone and thank you for joining me as always. I want to start off and I want to read you a story. It was written by Kirsten Powers, and this article is on USA Today. The name of her article was "I was sexually assaulted and thought it was my fault. It's past time for a 1980s reckoning." And I wanted to read you this because it'll it'll give some people who are borderline, not wondering borderline wondering, why do women wait so long, or this is for someone who this may give a little insight, at least from Kirsten's story of her reasoning. Um, this has happened to a lot of women. Do I believe that all women are telling the truth? As I stated in other videos, no, I don't. I don't believe, but at the same time, every woman is not lying either. Um, I just wanted to read this story because it's just it tugged at my heart. So here we go. Um, this first sentence. Let me stop again. Even her first sentence kind of tugged on my memory, and I was automatically drawn to read the rest of the story. So here we go. No more interruptions. When I was 15 years old, I passed out at a party after being fed all sorts of alcoholic concoctions by older boys I knew and idolized, but who in hindsight were eager to get me drunk. I awoke with a popular senior basketball player on top of me and my shirt off. Dizzy and confused, I could barely remember anything about the night before. I asked what had happened, and the boy told me we had just snuggled, and he couldn't explain why my shirt was off. A few days later, a male classmate I was close to exited the boys' locker room and visibly shaken. He told me this boy had bragged in the locker room that he had molested me when I was passed out. Molested is my word. For his part, this boy chose to gleefully describe in salacious detail what he did to me while I was unconscious. My face burned with shame. I begged my friend not to tell anyone else, and as far as I know, he didn't. I feared that if more people in my small Jesuit high school, I shouldn't have broke that out, but small Jesuit high school found out about it, I would be viewed as a slut or damaged goods. Sexual assault used to mean strangers in the alley. The only people I would have trusted with this information were my parents, but to tell them would involve explaining why I was at the party drinking rather than at a sleepover I had been given permission to attend. I would have been grounded for eternity. You have to remember, this is a 15-year-old's train of thought. I told no one. I don't know what month it was. I don't know whose house it was. I remember one of my two best friends being there, but she doesn't remember it. And why was she? It was just some random party as far as she knew at the time. I can't hear the doubters. Let me retract that. I can hear the doubters. Why now? Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you report him? Liar. The answer is simple. While I knew something terrible had happened, I didn't think I had been sexually assaulted. In the early 1980s, we didn't possess the vocabulary to make such declarations. I thought I had done something stupid and paid a price for it. I thought it was my fault. The memory of this event came flooding back last week with Christine Blasey Ford's testimony against Brett Kavanaugh. Many people have focused on the fact that she didn't mention the event to anyone until 2012. As a former teenage girl in the early 1980s, this does not seem remarkable to me. In fact, the first time I spoke of the incident chronicled here was last week. And yet I have zero doubt of what happened and who did it to me. When I was in high school, the phrase sexual assault was reserved for incidents of women being grabbed in the dark alleys by strangers. It was always violent. If it wasn't, then it wasn't sexual assault. It wasn't something the popular boy you went to school with did. Lace Morrow, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, channeled the 1980s View writing about Ford's allegation in the Wall Street Journal. No clothes were removed and no sexual penetration occurred. The sin, if there is one, was not one of those that cried to heaven for vengeance. He didn't rape you, for God's sake. Get over it. You don't want to ruin a promising young man's life, do you? The same boy who molested me had forced one of my best friends to give him oral sex the year before while they were on a date. We were disgusted by him. We thought he was a creep, but the phrase sexual assault never came up. In a recent conversation with this friend, she told me that she was too insecure to protest. She marveled that because they were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time of the incident, she didn't think that it was possible that what happened was sexual assault. But that's exactly what she calls it today. Is also what I call what happened to me. If the person who sexually assaulted me and my friend turned into an outstanding citizen, good father, and husband, do I think he should be put on the Supreme Court? No, I don't. I don't say this out of vindictiveness or a need for retribution. As a Christian, I believe in forgiveness, grace, and redemption. I am a big believer that people can make terrible mistakes in life and learn from them and go on to make significant and important contributions to the world. However, we cannot send teenage boys the message that they can sexually assault someone, and as long as they eventually become good citizens, we will elevate them to one of the most important positions in our society. We cannot send the message to teenage girls that attacks on their bodies don't matter because the perpetrator is young like them. We also cannot send the message to teenage girls that their response to being attacked or lack thereof is what will be put on trial. The fact that my friend and I continued to go to parties where this boy was or said hello to him in the hallways despite thinking he was a dirtbag does not mean these things did not happen. Our behavior then is not the problem. Just as Ford's failure to talk to anyone about what happened to her decades is not the problem. We were young teenagers who didn't even understand what happened to us. There is a problem though, and it's this. The culture failed to give us the language to describe such violations and make us feel that talking about what happened to an authority figure would only make things worse for us. Fortunately for women, what happened in the 1980s isn't staying in the 1980s. It's a reckoning that is well overdue. Now, if those things happen nowadays, I think women might be more secure about coming out. Some people still are going to say they're liars. Tamar Braxton just gave everyone a revelation that she was molested from both sides of her family. I never want to say one particular person, oh, that woman is lying. I'll put it general saying I don't think some women are telling the truth, but I won't pinpoint a particular person that's telling her truth to say you're lying. That's the fear that women that has gone through something like that, attempted rape, that's one of the fears of not saying anything. And also, they want to protect some people. They want to protect other persons, maybe children are involved. This one particular writer, Kirsten, she wasn't even supposed to be at the party. She told her parents that she was going to over to a sleepover. So then, getting drunk at 15, what are you doing drinking? I can understand, why. Oh, I can't tell my parents this. Because right away some people say, well, you lied right off to your parents. How do we know that you're telling the truth about this? So, just, instead of doubting her, just give her the benefit of the doubt, because you never want to say that this did not happen to Kirsten. I believe her personally, but that's me, because it sounds so familiar, and it's just hard for me personally to say that Kirsten is lying. She drank the alcohol, she drank it freely. I did not. Fortunately, the outcome was different for me than it was for her. And my heart just aches for her, because I'm putting myself in her place and say, God, what would my life have been if that had been, the rape had really happened? In my case, it was an attempted rape. But she wakes up the morning after and she knew what happened. You know from your body. She knew from her body what had taken place. She might not have remembered, but she knew when she woke up the differences in her body. And I won't go there, but you know what I'm getting at. So, in talking about Kavanaugh, I decided to bring this story instead. It's just one of those stories with him. There's other bloggers that have that's talking about him, and so I'll leave that up to them. I prefer to bring this story to you. And so that her telling that story, even me reading it again, because I read it a couple of times, but even reading it again after reading it a couple of times, it's like a trigger for me. And yes, I spoke of my situation But with her situation, it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't attempted. She was raped. And I'll say, and she didn't call any names, so I really don't have to say alleged because she's not pinpointing that guy. He knows who he is if he's still alive. She knows what he did. And her other friend, his girlfriend, she was forced to give him oral sex. But because they were in a relationship and there wasn't where he beat her up, or that they didn't consider it sexual assault. That it wasn't some stranger in the back alley that pulled her in the alley. It wasn't a stranger soul. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't a stranger. That's what I meant to say. It wasn't a stranger soul, and he didn't physically beat her up. That wasn't sexual assault. It was her boyfriend. But if someone forced you to do something that you're not wanting to do, and especially if you voice, no, I don't want this to happen, I don't care what relationship it is. If you say no, it could be your husband, and it's rape. So I'm going to finish there because we can talk about this. We can talk about this we can have a conversation for hours about this. And as always, I'm going to leave the link in the description box so you can read the article. And until next time, I will see you. Oh, and please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Whatever comments you want to make, feel free to make. I have decided, because usually when people comment, I want them to know that I'm listening, I'm reading, I'm hearing you, and I don't want to just sometimes put a little heart or or put a thumbs up or what have you. I want to really respond. I feel like we're having a conversation. However, I can be on a roll with that, and I don't want, I'm making this video, and so I don't want to just take control of the comments too. I want to hear your take on it. So if I just give you a heart or a thumbs up, just say a few things. Don't think that I'm not taking your comments seriously, because I read all of my comments. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with that, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.